be running the meetings from this point on. Welcome. I don't know if there's anybody else from the industry that's going to show up. Do we know? I don't know. So we can just maybe we can go start anyways. So I'm going to start with the introductions. My name is Amir Dejbakhsh. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for Engineering and Permitting.
And I'm Danny Leung. I'm the acting Assistant Deputy Executive Officer. That's a long. But I'll be helping Amir for the time being.
David Ono, Engineering Manager.
Paul Wright, Information Management Production.
Rula Hajjal, Senior Administrative Secretary in Engineering and Permitting.
I'm Bill Lamar, Executive Director of the California Small Business Alliance.
Judy York from York Engineering.
Bill Pierce, the Boeing Company.
I'm Michelle Santos, AQMD engineer. Engineer Choi, South Station engineer.
David Houck, Engineering and Permitting.
Zin Chen, Information Management.
William Thompson, Engineering and Permitting.
And Neil Barker, Engineering Permitting.
Susan Stark, Marathon.
You don't want to join us at the table?
I thought Sean was coming to
All right.
represent us, so I'll see.
All right, that's all. That's good enough. All right, so welcome again to our. Probably this will be our last meeting for the year. So,
Oh, die.
unless you guys want one, we can have one on the last week.
No, that's good.
2019. So we have several items on the agenda that we would like to discuss with you guys today. It's going to be pending application update, online filing update, dashboard update, and permit processing handbook update. So if there is no questions, we can start with the presentations. So I guess the first presentation is mine. All right, so the good news that I have is that we are trying to hold the line with the number of pending open applications that we have. What we have come to realization is that it was a difficult job getting down to the threshold that was set for us, but now it's apparent to us that it's even more difficult to maintaining it at that number. Because as we moved down, we basically got rid of all of the older applications, all the applications that we could quickly go through. So now we're spending a lot more time just making sure that we're going to be able to maintain the numbers that we have. And with the number of the reclaim applications that we're anticipating, we're going to be looking at the process again, see how we can improve and streamline our application processing.
And how many are you expecting under the December 7th deadline for
Oh
1146?
goodness, I think we were looking about almost 100.
Okay, so not 1,000.
Not 1,000 yet, but remember, this is just the first wave.
Yeah,
So that for the 1146, we and the way the rules are set up, they're all going to come in different times.
right.
So and in the next couple of years, we're going to be seeing an increase, and hopefully, if we do it correctly, we should be able to absorb the applications and get them out as quickly as possible. But one of the problems that we are going to be facing is if the applications are just being turned in as a placeholder. So in that case, we may be rejecting the applications because we just don't have the luxury of keeping a placeholder in our inventory. Because once the number starts going up, we're at 33. Actually, we're at around 3,400 right now because I have the latest numbers. And we sneeze, we're going to go up the 30, or 50%. So we have to be extremely careful to be able to make sure we can absorb the new applications coming in and be able to get them out as quickly as possible.
Now, these are permit applications for the landing rules
Right.
for the former or still reclaim facilities that
That's
they want to
correct.
put in, want to put out of reclaim right now.
Yeah, but they didn't need to. Yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
But since we are lowering the limits to meet the BARC requirements, then they have to file for new applications.
But they still can't get out of reclaim.
No, they still can't get out of it.
Until you present that whole package to the EPA.
That is correct.
Right, everyone is having to do both now.
Well, it's just a bark overlay right now on top of the reclaim pool.
So then, do these facilities have a facility permit and equipment permit?
No, everything's still be in the facility permit format. So if you recall, back in, when we did the modifications to Reg 3, we said that, we were going to maintain the facility permit format for all the facilities that are exiting reclaim. And we will leave it up to the facilities if they want to come back and ask us to convert those permits into command and control. So they just, everything will remain the same unless the facilities that will exit out of the reclaim, and that's several years down the road at this point. If they want to come back and says, okay, you know what, we don't want to have it in this format, we want to go back to command and control format, then we will convert those permits.
Oh, that would be nice. For those who are, I'm assuming, for those who are non-Title V.
Yes, well, so if you recall, the Title V is in two different formats also.
Right.
So one is on the reclaim format and the other one is on the alternative format.
Right, the stapled together format.
Stapled together format. So if you really want to go to a stapled together alternate format,
You could do that.
we can do that, but it's going to have fees associated with it because what we have discovered was it was very difficult going into the reclaim format. It's even more difficult
Getting out of it.
converting that permit to a regular
Right.
command and control permit.
Right, but the advantage is facilities then can better figure out what they need to do because it's clearer, the standard format
Yeah.
is clear.
And we left that decision to the facilities discretion.
That's nice, that's
If
nice.
they want to keep it that way, great. If they don't,
Okay.
we have a place, we have a pathway for them to change the permit.
Now, on that graph that you had up there, what is does that show the impact of these source test permit applications?
Yes, that's everything that we have in our inventory.
Okay, because there's a backlog there. That
Correct.
It seems to be, we don't exactly know how large the backlog, but.
So that's included.
That's included in that number, so
So-
that's everything.
That's everything, including the kitchen sink.
Okay.
So if you filed an application and if we accepted it, and it's being weighted for pre-screening, that number is included in that, the number that we report. So it's not like, we used a very complicated formula to define what a backlog is, even though we should, because some stuff, as you can see in the next slide, we really, what we really have that we haven't permitted yet is really around 2,300 or 2,400 applications. But since we started the process based on the open and pending inventory because of our governing board's request, we're maintaining that. But really, what we have that we have not worked in our inventory is around 2,400 applications.
I want to say it's really helpful. People really do notice their permits are being processed much quicker than they used to be. It is very nice because then people are able to know what's going to happen with their equipment. And it's more timely. Everything's more timely now,
Yeah.
which is nice.
And this particular slide sort of gives you also a breakdown as far as how many, the time duration that the application has been with us. And then, we have some thoughts on how we're going to be able to tackle this to our dashboard process, which is part of our update on the dashboard, which we'll go over it in a minute, actually maybe in about 10
Do
minutes.
you still get about 7,000 or so a year permit applications?
And that has been our concern because, we run numbers twice a week now. Tuesday mornings and Friday mornings. Friday mornings I have heart attacks, and then by Tuesday, we have worked overtime. I'm back to a little bit of a breathing room until we get more, figure out how many applications do we actually receive during that week, because it's that we continuously are now monitoring, making adjustments, making sure the applications are as they're coming in. What is the status? Can we process them? Can we move on with it? If not, what can we do about it? Or if not, and if necessary, we'll reject it back. But we are continuously maintaining our vigilance to make sure these numbers don't go up. But sometimes things will go out of our hand. Like, for example, we moved our staff from 5th floor to 3rd floor. Well, there is a delay now that nothing got entered for a week. So it's like, next week I'm going to have a massive heart attack. But no, I know, I'm just using metaphors. But but the reality is we're continuously monitoring this number, making sure that, we keep our numbers to the level that we had promised the governing board that to be maintained.
Now, Amir, my last question, I think. You said earlier that these are you're starting to see a little more complex permits here, which I assume don't lend themselves to online, the online process rather than a manual process, is that right?
That is correct.
So has that pretty much come to an end now, or at least?
Well,
more
no.
slow
So,
down?
what we're doing is, and, maybe we can discuss it when we get to the online process.
Oh,
Because
okay, sure.
I want to really share all what we have discovered and what our thought process is. But yes, you are correct. This includes actually some of the online applications that we're hoping to remove from the process. But the problem is the getting facilities to actually use the online process. Because when they actually use the online process, and yes, we may have the 3 modules, and like I said, we'll go over it a little bit more in detail. But if we can free up the engineers' time from some of these online applications, that's when we can actually use more staff to process applications that cannot be get out quickly.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, so if there is no questions on that, actually we have a couple more new incomers. We want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Hamid Nolan. I'm here with Subcommittee.
Greg Bush, Marathon.
Okay. Welcome. So I guess we can go to the next item on the agenda, which is an update on online filing.
Okay, I want to give an update on, we mentioned the online filing program that we have set up initially for the 3 equipment modules. That was for getting a permit online. And Amir was talking about some of the lessons we learned there. What we are shifting our focus now is towards the registration, the Rule 222 registrations. Those are a little even more simpler than the permits that we put in the first 3 modules. And to give a background, just to make sure everyone's on the same page with respect to Rule 222. Rule 222 registrations, the registrations are for equipment that would otherwise be subject to a permit requirement. They're not permits, so they don't trigger things like new source of V and things like that. So they're limited to low emitting equipment, and it's in many cases it's a condition of having an exemption. So there's some equipment that's outright exempt, that's in Rule 219, but there's some equipment that might be low emitting, but potentially could be higher. And so that type of equipment we carve out for our Rule 222 registrations, so that so long as you meet whatever descriptions or conditions associated with that registration, or there are certain sizes, you register that equipment, then you're exempt from permit. If you don't have the registration, then you would be subject to a permit. So it's a limited condition for maintaining your exemption in many cases. And in some cases also, we track those categories by getting the registration, so we are able to identify and maybe do, as part of rule development, determine whether or not that equipment really is low emitting, or if there's technologies that could be transferred to do future rulemaking or put additional conditions, or maybe potentially require permits if the assessment shows that the initial assessments were too optimistic. Currently, if to do a registration, we have on our webpage a bunch of PDF forms, online electronic forms that you would fill out and then submit them, but through paper. So you either fill them out in the PDF format in the Acrobat and print them, or print them out and hand fill them out and submit them to us. And then we process those registrations, and a lot of it is just to make sure that the information is correct and complete. There may be some additional cross checks, and then you would get your registration follow-up. So we're trying to automate that using the same tools that we developed for the 3 equipment modules. So you would apply online, pay online, submit online, and then receive your registration. And since there's not as many compliance checkpoints for the registration, we're pursuing that as the next step in our online filing process. So right here, I just have a little screenshot. If you, we had the presentations on our 3 modules. All we do is we, at the bottom of the modules, this Rule 222, and there's a pull down which shows all the different ones that are available. And this is actually from our test system. So right now it's only available on our test system, but we're preparing to go external with that. Yeah, any question?
Yeah, so just had a question because we just ran into a problem with the 1415 registration system. When you say online payment, but will it be the same as the other modules right now that basically you can tell it to generate an invoice so we can?
Yeah, it uses the same online payment system that was for our 3 equipment modules, which is the same payment system for if you're paying your any other payment that goes through.
It's a third-party site, so we don't have any control over the looks and feel and what the process is.
Oh, no, but I'm talking about the option right now, like when we do a permit app or things like that, we can ask it to generate the invoice so then we can submit a check.
No.
And that's the problem we are having with the 1415 because we can't do e-checks or a credit card.
Yeah, all these online systems are meant to have no district interaction. So when you create an invoice, that invoice actually goes to finance and is posted against your account manually. This system is all automated. So there's no option to generate an invoice that you would pay later to our finance department.
So then basically we just have to keep filing.
Yes, it's not, it won't accommodate your need for an invoice because it's in real time. So as you pay.
Oh, no, I understand it.
Well, I'm trying to understand the issue with 1415.
Yeah,
Oh, same. I mean, I just used it. I mean, worked great. It was easy to enter all the information, but then at the end, it only allows e-check or credit card, and Boeing doesn't allow us to pay that way.
We have a separate fee calculator module that allows you to create an invoice that goes through finance, and they manually retrieve it and post it to your account. That's not available through these online systems because they're completely 100% automated.
So it's a good point. Maybe we can work with finance and then if they go in there in advance and create an invoice.
So probably the other way around. So Zen from information management. So for online payment modules, an invoice actually is created behind the scene inside our finance system when you make that request. However, the payment methods obviously, because we're trying to, just like we're trying to go electronic and automated. So everything, the only online method that it's going to accept is credit card and check. That's how it works. We could look at some things that maybe the invoice is there. I'll show you a way to get to the invoice maybe, and you can print it and have it posted in the future. But keep in mind that will break your processing. You will not get your permit right away. Right?
Oh, I'm not. It's just, they've eliminated our abilities to use credit cards or e-check, and it just. But 14th, it was very easy putting all the info in, and
that's good feedback.
And everything else, but.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a number of clients that have the same issue, and so. Yeah, we end up paying it and then have
Get with the 21st century, my God, if we can do it, you guys can too.
We need Venmo. Can you use Venmo?
So the issue is that I guess Boeing won't
Large
cut you a check
companies.
until you show up an invoice, basically.
Right, or they'll do e-checks, but the problem is it's not automatic. I have to take what. I would take the invoice the district submitted and put it into their system to even do e-check, but they don't allow us any longer to have the ability to
It
do
has
any
to
of
go
that.
through their central procurement system, which is all electronic also, and it's just not,
See, well, yeah, I completely appreciate what you're saying. So I'm sitting here thinking about, okay, how can we make it simplify this, or we can go around it?
It's almost impossible because our process, the whole concept, one of the root concepts is real time. So we want you to get your permit in 45 minutes. And anything that interrupts that and makes it manual kind of defeats the whole purpose from our perspective about these automated systems.
So thank you for the
right,
interjection,
and
but I
they're
had a
just
different thought.
financial control, right? They're
Right.
trying to control where
Right.
Well,
funds
no,
are
I mean,
going.
the way we generate the invoices is based on a reference number, which in most cases is an application number. So if we go back, and we maybe have to think about is that, if you can create the invoice and pay the invoice outside,
Separately,
and then, the system maybe asks you if they can, have you already paid for this? But then the problem is that, we're looking at a reference number and application number, and the system might not have generated the application
You
number.
have to create a credit on the account though.
Yeah, yeah. But that's
Yeah.
something for us to think about and see if we can come up with something to.
yeah, it seems like it would need to create a credit in their account,
Yeah,
and then the application,
Would post against it.
right, so which means that, we have to find create a reference number that then the programs can,
that could be the application number, no?
but we don't generate the application number until you go to the program. So even if you're in the finance, you don't have an application number to post a credit.
If it's a few days, it's okay, I think.
Well,
45.
I'm speaking as we're
Yeah.
talking, and Zim's probably clenching his teeth going,
Yeah.
no way,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
about a whole year worth
Precision
of programming.
control.
He's gonna have a
say
hard
problem
time.
solved.
Yeah,
We'll work on that.
yeah, we'll, now that we know what the problem is, we can go back and take a look.
But no, I mean, and the 1415, it was very simple to use. It was easy entering all the information in, and I assume that it's keeping that, so like the next time around, it'll have all the information still. So very easy to put it in, and very
Yeah.
easy for the district to have the information. But it's just the payment piece. And so she told me, basically when I called in to see if there's a way around it, she said, well, you just have to file by paper.
Yeah.
And that sort of hope defeats the whole, but we're aware of the problem now. And, we came up with the modules first, so we sort of established what the process was, and everybody else is just following it right now. So maybe we need to go back to the drawing board. And that's the problem that we're having. Well, why don't I just finish up, let Dave finish up his presentation.
Yeah, this is, got off topic, but it's same type of issue. I mean, if that's the route we're going.
Okay. All right, I think we're done with the slide. I just wanted to point out that it's just, we're building up the old first screen for the 3 modules, we're adding to the bottom of that. So what we're looking to do is start out a little bit slower with 3 modules from the 222. There's about 20, some maybe 20, 21, 22 222 forms, but a large portion are for these 3 main categories, which is the negative air machines associated with asbestos removal, the smaller boilers, and char boilers, and combined, those 3 represent about 80% of the total number that we get in annually. So we're going to start with those 3, and that will take out a large number of the applications that come in for 222, and also gives a chance to learn and make improvements as we implement it.
If you need some beta testers, I'm sure we would help.
Actually, that's what we're gonna be asking you.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure we would help, yeah.
I think I should have said that instead of here, but it's fine. So just to give a kind of some screenshots from the system. The first thing is just an initial screening criteria to determine whether or not that equipment would qualify for a registration. And registration is fairly simple, so in most cases, it's just a couple of questions. As we went through all of them, I think maybe the most is like 5 questions. But for negative air machines, they ask questions, basically, are you using this for asbestos? Because if it's a negative air machine for other purposes, and then it may require a permit or may be completely exempt from permit. So it's just a general question so that people give them a chance to make sure that they're applying for the right form or for the right registration.
David, sorry, could we go back one step? What about wells?
Oil and gas wells?
Yeah,
Yeah, those are,
what's the
in
other?
terms of frequency.
Yeah,
Initially, there's a large number, but they don't apply every year. So that we don't get the volume every year that we
Yeah.
get with these other
but they
equipment.
change, so it would be nice to have the online system for them.
Yeah, that's in the, we initially thought that was gonna be
Yeah.
one of the bigger ones, but in terms of numbers, it's
Not really.
fairly not.
Okay, fair enough.
And the other feature that we tried to build into this one, different from the equipment modules, is that since they're simpler, you can apply for multiple equipment in the same submittal. So in most cases, it's just a different, possibly manufacturer model or serial number. And so you would enter multiple equipment, and then it would calculate, the fee based on the number of equipment. And then you would process all in one submittal rather than having to go and enter all the general information each time. So we added that feature. And in this case, you would click on the button and then you would say how many pieces of equipment. We set it up so you can do up to 25 equipment at a time for one submittal. So for facilities that have, or operations that have more than one equipment they want to do, they can do multiple ones. And it's generally a 4-step process. You do some data entry. There's an opportunity to add additional electronic documents, maybe a cover letter or something if someone wanted to add additional detail associated with the application, or if they may think it's a little more complex if they have multiple equipment. They can put that in there. There's the payment, which we talked about a little bit. And then there's the attestation portion, which is basically confirming the information that you put in is what you intended to put in. And then you do the final submittal. So as part of that attestation, they get a preview of what the registration would look like, including conditions associated with that type of registration. Most of the conditions are, must operate properly and maintain properly, and reiterating some of the information that was put in as part of the registration to ensure that they don't make any changes with that. And then following that submittal, they get an email with their information they put in like the PDF type form, as if they submitted it as a paper form, indicating who was the one who submitted it, and then the registration. So, our next step is to put it out, these 3 modules out in a production environment. We initiated that process, and we hope to have that completed in a couple weeks or so. And we're going to update our webpage to indicate and kind of announce the availability of these, as well as look for people to start trying these out. And probably the asbestos removal one is the one we're going to try to focus on most, because we do have the online notification system. And so most of them have already gone through, or maybe all of them, I think it's mandatory, right? They've all gone through the process of having a login to our system already. So that would eliminate one of the biggest hurdles, which is acceptance for using online systems and registering an online presence. And then just adding this additional module to it and trying it out and getting feedback from that. Questions, Susan?
Quick question, just curious in terms of usage, how many gas stations have been using that online component? Is that getting, a lot of value?
Well, I'm going to go back to the answer that I gave Bill during the admin committee meeting. When we designed these programs, it wasn't supposed to be all in just looking at one module or 2 modules individually, and we was looking at the whole program in totality. So we knew that the numbers of the users might be more limited with the first 3 modules, but we were required to create those 3 modules. And we learned a lot by creating those 3 modules. But we're going to be getting a lot more usage out of the modules from this phase 2 and phase 3 of our process, because those 3 modules were phase 1 of the process. Now, phase one would consisted of 3 different modules. It was a dry cleaning, auto body spray booth operations, and the gas stations. And the second phase, which would be the Rule 222s and also the emergency engines, stationary emergency engines that are certified. So those are all part of our phase 2, and a part of our phase 3 would be basically going paperless. So we figured out that with the dry cleaners, the modules will be used probably in the next year or 2, because most of the dry cleaning facilities are switching from PERC, because the rule sort of doesn't allow them to switch to use the PERC anymore. So they're going to be coming in. So that's where we're going to get the most of the usage, because once you install a dry cleaning equipment, that dry cleaning equipment is just going to stay there for the next 5 to 10 years, because just a large amount of investment, initial investment that goes into that device. So that's going to be with the dry cleaners in the next year or 2. With the gas stations, one of the limiting factors is the SQL concern, because at certain amount of throughput, that triggers SQL. So we had to put that in there, because once the permit is issued, we can't go back and take the permit back from when we have issued it. So we had to put in checks and balances in the gas stations to make sure it doesn't go over the SQL thresholds, which sort of limited the amount of throughput that the facility can have as a result of the modification or use of the module. And be honest with you, we have not got that many takers. And when we had actually we had a specific meeting for the gasoline dispensing module, and there were several people who came in who are mainly people who will file the applications. I mean, we actually had one meeting with one of them. She came in, we hold her hand, say, please use it. We're here to see what what's being done, see if there's any problems, how we can fix it. And we haven't heard back any from the facilities that were here. So, and with the gas stations, it seems to us that there's only several consulting facilities or consulting companies that are actually filing the applications. And so if they're not coming, we don't know how to twist their arms unless we come in there and say, it's mandatory, you have to use the module. If the module doesn't allow you, then the application is going to come in and we're going to accept it, but you're going to go through the normal process. And we haven't really reached there yet, but that might be the next steps that we have to put into consideration. If we want to make it mandatory, that if we have the module, you have to go to the module.
But is it because of the limitations? I mean,
well,
on the
there's
usage,
also another
on
wrinkle. We have 2 amazing engineers that are dedicated to service stations, and they do such an amazing job with interactivity, and they get these things turned around in just a few days.
Yeah.
And so there's no real desire to test out something that's unfamiliar when
And it's
kind
limited.
of a curse of our own good effort, I think.
Right.
And so everybody wants to speak to Randy or Nate. They get their questions answered on the spot. They have a human presence, and
their applications usually go up within 2 to 3 weeks.
few
Oh, I
days.
see.
So it's
We don't do
unfortunately,
gas stations, so.
I mean, I can talk to them about it.
Just slow them down. No, don't.
But, yeah,
So the waiting time
For the
on
gas
your
station
present system isn't all that great then?
no, it's,
The trade-off
Not for
isn't
gas
that-
stations.
Not for gas stations.
Right.
Yeah.
they're very enthusiastic. But like I said, I can talk to them.
No, we're not. It's a permit streamlining, not permit
But it
holding.
may have much to do with the throughput limits. If going through the online system means I can only do half the throughput I want,
Well, see, in often
know,
cases,
it's,
these
that's
guys
not
will
gonna
calculate the limit that they can have based upon risk, so they don't have to do anything. They just file the application, Randy calls them in a couple days, tells
right,
them what's up, and then boom,
right.
it's done.
We're going to be seeing, in fact, I have a phone conversation with Dave Edwards this afternoon at CARB on their CTR rate, phase 2, which is next year. And they deferred smaller sources this year, early this year. So we won the battle, we didn't win the war. but with the knowledge that they're going to revisit that next year, and that's what this whole conversation is going to be about. But if they pursue the same method that they have planned, and I'm pretty sure they're going to require even these smaller sources like gas stations, and dry cleaners and auto body shops and everything like that, you know, to inventory, test and report all of these toxics that are in their emission streams, up to and including using default emission factors, which is your EQUATE program here that we're having trouble getting off the ground, I guess, with meetings and everything. So that's going to, I think, bring the mere presence of that is going to bring these people into this.
Yeah, and you know, I know we talked about the throughput and limitations, but the throughput and limitations is very, you know, it's a high number. It's not a small number. So for
I don't know.
gas
That's why I
stations
was-
that are, you know, it's a the larger gas stations, you can't use it. But you know, for the smaller gas stations,
Right.
again, so we've become so efficient with these that the permits are going out.
But those permit applications are going to, at least I think they will come under closer scrutiny then, won't they? As far as their toxic.
Well, they're under pretty heavy scrutiny already, because, I mean, service stations are a huge source of VOC, and, I mean, until the benzene NESHAP got a lot of the benzene out of gasoline, they were a significant source of, you know, area source emissions for toxics. So, I mean, that's been greatly reduced, but there still
Right.
is some benzene in the gasoline.
And benzene, under the MATE study, benzene is our third highest risk value
Which makes sense.
in LA.
Yeah.
So going back to your question, we would love to have more people use it because, you know, we have offered to bring people in, hold their hands, you know, teach them how to use the program. But and if nothing worse, nothing else, they can file the applications online. And then you know, they don't need to do anything else with it. You know, that application comes in and we will just grab the application as though it's been filed. And we will actually give it more attention because, you know, we're trying to establish, you know, procedures on how to deal with the applications that come to the online filing.
You know, one suggestion is to create a little webinar, or what do you call a recorded instruction. Yeah. But anyways, we do these webinars, we record them, they're easy to do, and then you just post it on your website that's instructional so that it walks people electronically through how to do it.
That's
You know,
a wonderful
if
idea.
people can, so instead of you having to hold each person's hand one at a time, they can go and watch the little YouTube video, if you will. That's what we all do now, we go to YouTube and figure out how do we do this? Right.
If you remember that.
So it just walks you through and you use Snippet to show how to electronically do it. That's what we do in-house for our training programs
Excellent
now.
idea.
If you remember
That may-
at that admin committee you were referencing, when I got up and commented, you know, I told the committee members, you know, that you guys have a good product,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
But like anything, you know, if you're trying to sell something, you got to get out there and market it and push it. So,
You know,
At least you have to
and
make it easy for people to
Yeah.
know what
well,
to do.
yeah. Well, I mean, we are going to meet again, not with you guys, I mean internally, going over these three modules and see what we can do to
Yeah.
make it more appealing.
Yeah.
Make, you know, because, you know, again, one of the concerns that we have, at least I have, is that, you know, that we make sure that permit is accurate, looked at all the rules, and, you know, we didn't basically check mark everything. Because once that permit goes out, and then somebody gets a hold of it and says, look, you guys didn't do this. And now, you know, and that just sort
That
of,
would be bad.
but
Gets into
if somebody walks in the front door and goes over to the permit counter and says, hi, I've just opened up a hamburger stand or a gas station, I need a permit. You know, somebody over there should say, well, thank you, sir, or ma'am, you know, come right over here to this kiosk, you know, and I'll sit down or have somebody sit down with you and.
Yep.
And
Yeah, if
just
they could
not
just
do anything, just direct them
launch
to
the
that.
video,
Right,
yeah.
Or they did launch the video, or actually maybe, well, it's a coordinated effort between us and the business assistance group. And we have talked with them that, please advertise these. But, that's a kiosk and actually having the video, or also maybe helping them to do it ourselves, maybe that's also not a bad idea.
I was in FedEx yesterday, looking at some Christmas cards, and that's exactly what the store manager there said, we don't do that, but we have a bank here of computers here, and I'll be happy to have somebody go over there and walk you through the program or the app and everything like this. And that's the only way I could get my product, is to do it their way.
Well, yeah, but yes, if you walk in here and you have an application that fits into that process, we can do that.
Right.
But if it's because we still accept applications through mail, so we don't have that option right now to say that's it.
Return to sender.
Return. No, go.
There is such a thing called customer service, which we've been trained on, so.
Rubber stamp.
No rubber
stamp.
So any help that we can get with helping us.
I had sent out
Advertise
the
these.
information back when it was first available, and I'm glad to resend it within my group. But I think having something like a YouTube video or something that people can review and, not have to make the trek to Diamond Bar, it'd be easy to forward the link and say, take a look.
Well, when we move into that whole paperless processing, at some point we have to make a decision whether we're going to accept applications online or not. I mean, through mail anymore or not. At least maybe for minor sources, not for major sources, because then we have to go to the courier process. But we have thought about it. In the sort of circumstances like for 1403, for those registrations that they use for 1403, the rule allowed us to do that, so that's why they're all now doing it online. But we don't have that luxury yet with the registrations or the permits.
Right. Is the emergency engine one up and running?
Emergency engine one is the next major one that we're looking into.
Next. Okay, so it's not up and running yet, because I was going to say that one we could test.
Emergency.
The others we
What's the
don't.
other one?
Well, we're actually preparing all 23 forms. So we started with the first 3 because we wanted to get the majority,
Those are,
to handle the majority of the application that come in under Rule 222. So that's the first 3 that we have created, and then we're going to look back. And if it's the onesie or twosies, we sort of pushed it back. But we're going to do the 222s, and then we're going to be focusing on the emergency engines. And then, but meanwhile, we're also proceeding with the 3rd phase, and now going back and updating the phase 1. So, the David group has been extremely busy keeping up with all of the demands that has been put on them. So, this was not a one-shot and we're done process. It was never intended for that, and we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen, because we want to make sure that these programs are successful. We update them, take your comments into the consideration, and make the product better.
And we have a question on the emergency engine. Can Title V facilities use that online?
No, because like I was explaining, there's that whole Cromer issue that we have to deal with. We haven't looked at it yet because the Title V permit is under federal requirements. There is a lot more information that is required to allow you to input data online, which is not as much for the non-major sources. And we've been let's just leave it at that.
Okay. So I guess in phase 3, all that will be addressed.
Pardon me?
So that will be addressed in phase 3, paperless?
That's the emergency engine is still on phase 2.
Right. No,
Yeah.
but eventually in
Yes.
phase 3, paperless phase where.
Right.
For Title V.
For Title V, and we may actually break the phase 3 into phase 3A and phase 3B.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be huge now.
Yeah, because again, the whole goal is to get more applications into online and on paper. So we have around 27,000 facilities, roughly about 300 Title V facilities. So there's a imbalance between the number of applications that we can bring in through non-major sources versus the major sources. Okay, so if there's no more questions, we can go to the next topic, David.
Okay, so we had introduced our what we're calling pending application status dashboard, I think at our last meeting, where we track applications as they progress through with our staff engineers and give them kind of a red, yellow, green light in terms of amount of time, as well as the opportunity to identify any bottlenecks or things that are holding up the application, which we call, awaiting action. And so we're still in the process of refining that tool a little bit, but we took a snapshot last month to see kind of like where, in general, where applications are as kind of as a percentage or a frequency of recurrence. So in terms of, in that snapshot, roughly 60% of the applications were awaiting some kind of action. And that was split roughly between awaiting an action as on a part of the facility or awaiting action on a part of the district. And Bill, you mentioned something about the source testing, so we kind of captured that a little bit in terms of finding out like how many are held up because of a source test, awaiting either a source test to be conducted or source test results to be reviewed and approved from us.
Now, David, that's 60%. Is that 60% of 3,363?
Right, or as many as there were in October.
Or that number.
Yeah, because the total pending application includes the one that the permit to construct has been issued. So if there's awaiting a source test, it's still in our inventory.
Yeah. And so right now, the tool where it does, it allows the engineers to input that information. We're refining it so we can pull more information out. Right now, it's still fairly basic in terms of the information reporting capability, but as we're looking at it, we're coming with more ideas on how to pull that information in and analyze it. But this is the initial snapshot just to see where we're at. Now it might be easy to see on your handouts, but with respect to awaiting facility actions, the bulk of that is because there's additional information that's been requested and the engineers are waiting for that to come back. So that's about 14% and of probably roughly half of the information that is awaiting facility information is because we're waiting for additional information to come back. And I put some of the other ones just to see the, in terms of the scale as a percentage, what are the major I'll say holdups, but that sounds negative, but actions that are awaiting in particular category.
What's fee resolution? What does that mean?
They didn't pay proper fees, or maybe they have delinquent fees for the facility if they have multiple permits or multiple fees that are due, and maybe it was a process they paid the wrong amount. So then we can't go forward until that is resolved.
I mean, we can still accept the applications if it's within that 85% of the total fee that was paid. It just that
Is there a
can
is
be
a question?
Yes, and it cannot be completed. It cannot be finalized
Right.
until the actual fees.
So that's it's being held up for that reason. Again, in process is about 40% of the applications they're just going through the normal process. So that's the second column. And then things that are waiting facility action apart from the additional information request, there's about 5% where there's a compliance issue. So if there's a NOV that's open, we can't issue the permits until they resolve those compliance issues. There's some marginal things on, if there's a draft that's been sent out to the facility, we're reviewing it, so we're waiting for them to complete the review. That's about 1%. And then there's a public notice that's ends up being fairly small, awaiting facilities to complete the public notice request. That's what we require them to do it, or the rules require them to do it. And then there's the source testing piece, which is 6% on the facility action. And then if you look on the district action, there's a source test review of 4%. So that's about roughly 10% of the applications are being held up because of source testing. which is what we have in that quite working group meeting on. So we're trying to see if there's any other large categories that we need to focus on and maybe have some other kind of, I'll say task force of some kind, not maybe official task force, but a focused effort to review those areas to see if there's anything can be done to streamline those areas. Awaiting construction, this just means that they got a PC and, waiting for them to finish construction before we can issue the PO. So that's a condition that would show for things that have been issued PCs. And stuff on the far right, these are district related actions. And apart from the source testing one, there could be a pending policy decision that, we're waiting for that before we move forward, we want to make sure there's consistency amongst all the engineering staff to make sure the process is the same way. So that could cause, that's been identified by some engineers as being awaiting an action. Public notice again, and then some things associated with more complicated permits where there's a sequel, what we call other agency review, or maybe a power plant type application, and modeling, and then maybe field evaluation, things like that. So you see there's a lot of incidental things that are not part of the normal routine where you have everything ready to go and you can process yet. You need to wait for some additional action. And so it's broken down here.
And so if I may interject, the awaiting facility action, that 6% from the source testing, that's not part of the, I don't think it's part of the equate process. That's for the facilities to do the source. We're waiting for them to submit the review to us. So then the second column is a source test review. That's what we're trying to enhance and streamline.
But that was the question I was going to ask. That source test review 4%, does that represent the backlog of source tests?
Well, it depends on you define backlog, but it's the, from our perspective, it's,
By Mike
we're waiting for,
and his
turn it
folks?
around, yeah.
So
I think last time we were here, they said it was about 800.
Okay.
Per
So we
source
sort of
test
make
that are
sense.
waiting
We'll
for
have
review.
the 3,000
Yeah,
number?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Okay, so that's more than 800.
Well,
It's a lot, yeah.
No, 4% is about 100 some. 4% of 3,000 is 100 some. But the point is that there are some compliance tests still in.
That's right, there are a lot more than just
Lot more than
permit
just
source
permits.
tests,
Okay,
right,
yeah.
that's right.
But there are two different kind of tests.
You're right.
Yeah.
And they're both important to get processed
Yeah.
in a timely fashion,
Sure.
so they're competing for priority.
Yeah, so the way we designed our dashboard was to keep track of how many applications we have, how many source tests we have sent to the downstairs for them to review, so we can keep track of it.
Yeah.
So we have a better understanding of, where we are with our pending applications.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they've added some staff, so I think they're starting to probably catch up with some of that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they take our staff and they put it in their staff, so we're doing
I know.
And so, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, do you also look at this by the length of time the permits?
That was my next point. That's a good segue. Yeah, this is just a snapshot. So we haven't had the tool long enough to really start tracking how long it's been in each category. And the other thing too is because we rolled out the tool initially just to make sure we can start capturing the data. As we're using it, we're finding that we want to make additional enhancements for quality assurance checks, as well as additional reporting capability to be able to track length of time in those categories, and then also to cross-check with the supervisors and seniors and managers to review the information to make sure that it's consistently inputted. So right now, that's just a face value snapshot, but not necessarily capturing how long it's been in each one of those boxes. So that's that's kind of our next steps, our deeper dive into the data, if you will. To review those that, the larger percentage items that are indicated as awaiting action, and then determining, how long they've been there to see if that's an issue. Well, those are the ones we want to attack first to get some improvements in our system. I mentioned the source testing one. And some of you have been a part of that working group. So that part of that is looking at our perspective, the backlog, so to speak. I know they don't want to necessarily call it a backlog because it implies a lot of other things. Some are just, they're working inventory, some is actual backlog, but as they work in that, I think they'll have a better idea of how to best characterize their working inventory, because it is split into different pieces. One permit-driven, some compliance-driven, some they're emission factor-driven for their reports. And there could be other obligations also. So I'll let them work that out. And yeah, like I mentioned, we're looking to find better ways to analyze the data, including, I'll say, processing time in any of those particular conditions. And we're going to continue to build on that. And we've gone through initial review of the system with recommendations for improvements, and those are in our, we'll call it stage environment, and we're looking to finalize that, to push that through and get additional improvements into the system.
Have you folks added any more people to that source testing unit?
My understanding is that they have hired new staff, and then there's some that have been transferred to their team. So, yeah.
There's a learning curve there too, so, yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the source test review is not a simple thing.
Yeah, so,
Can I just jump in a second?
yes.
Was the issue about source testing, similar to engineering and permitting, is that they receive incomplete source test reports also. And so when you're referencing 800, they're not all workable.
Oh, really?
Because we're all in communication, so we're asking them to prioritize, and they say, look, these are incomplete.
Right,
There's certifications that have to be provided, there's
Right.
holes in source test reports,
right,
just as we get it in applications received, so.
right. Yeah, that makes sense, because I know we review ours before they go in, and
Right.
we try to fix them before they go in. So, yeah, if they're not,
So maybe we should channel all our work through you, and
I
then
know.
we'll get a better product so we can go
Yep.
faster.
I hear
And
ya.
you'll be surprised how many source tests
I
we
hear you.
get that hasn't been reviewed.
Yeah,
I mean, source test reports clearly shows that they failed.
right. It's
You know,
like,
you raise an
have you guys thought about this?
You raise an interesting question, because my members, I really have to dig to try to remember anybody who's ever seen the results of their own source test. I mean,
Right.
and if they have, that they understand it in the first place. Usually it's done by a contractor, consultant.
I teach in my classes, I do a lot of outreach, and I teach in my classes to make sure you have a protocol, make sure your source tester is following the protocol, make sure you get a draft of the report in a timely fashion, because the deadline is coming, and make sure it's reviewed and so forth. So, but, right, you're right, it's complicated, and people don't
complicated.
always understand, yeah.
And like Ed was saying, we have an approved protocol. When you deviate from the approved protocol,
Right,
and you don't
it's a
talk
big
with us,
problem, yeah.
that how to describe it in the report goes to the source testing group,
Right.
and they look at it, and then all of a sudden, the issues are raised, and then everything is delayed. And then that sort of delays everything in the pipeline.
But
You're right.
again, just about everybody that I'm acquainted with gets a source test company off of your list of referrals. And I guess they just
No,
naturally
that
assume.
just means that the source test company knows how to conduct the testing.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they
we
necessarily
don't
have
approve
quality
anybody,
processes in place to make sure that it follows.
Well, there is actually a statement there that has gone through a quality assurance by the company that is reporting it, but, oh well.
That has more to do with the lab, the
Yes.
procedures
Procedures, yeah, you're
for
absolutely
sampling, and then the lab procedures. It's not necessarily,
what they get from it.
But I'm
and it's
saying-
not, and they frequently, the source test companies, to be honest, the source test companies really don't understand the compliance obligations. They don't understand the rules that they are then, following.
But again, I go back to, this assumption, and obviously it's flawed, is that if a contractor, if a company or a consultant is referenced on your website, that's sort of the Mr. Good Wrench of
No.
whatever it is.
No, it's not.
We
There's a lot
never,
of statements declaring that that's not true.
Yeah,
That this is just a listing of available companies, they haven't been certified or reviewed by the district.
That's this print right here, right?
We can make it larger.
Yes, we can put it in bold, in
Right.
red, flashing colors.
We
They
can't-
know
we
who
can't make
they-
anything
yeah.
flashing because of epileptics, but.
yeah, they have technicians that understand the source test methodology that's to be followed, but there's a lot of other
Well,
pieces to it.
but then I don't, what I think what we have on our website is a list of the approved labs,
Yes,
not the list of the source testing companies.
no, that's
But
probably.
again, so somebody looking at that, and they've got their own business to conduct, and they say, approved, yeah, okay.
Okay, we'll make it larger then,
So it's,
Yeah,
and maybe slow flashing.
Well, yeah, but, no, I mean, it's, but, and we are continuously updating the program, that data is being inputted in, so we're collecting data, and one of the best parts about the whole thing is that was very interesting to me was the percentages of the applications that require us to take an action outside of the source testing or doing an HI or CQA, because we're going to, next phase of our process will be to go in there and tackle those, making sure we handle those and make that they're not stuck because it's on somebody's desk.
right, it raises a good point though, if source testing, and that's for David to figure out, if source testing is causing delays and additional burden on district staff because what's being submitted, it doesn't meet a certain quality, then there should be a consideration of maybe we need a checklist or some kind of application form that goes with, maybe like a 400A that goes with the source test, where the facility says, yes, we followed the protocol and it's attached or whatever, and, certain
Right.
things that are causing these stumbling blocks, at least so there's more awareness.
So
Or-
that's why we're moving away from accepting the applications, by each different divisions, because the way the equate process is now being proposed is that there would be a portal of entry.
Right.
And then through that portal, then it gets distributed to the divisions, and then divisions will distribute it back to the source testing then will give it back to divisions or to convey the message. But there has always been several forms that the facilities had to fill out. There's a STA1 and STA2. STA1 is basically giving you general information that the company was supposed to fill out, and STA2 is basically writing down the actual limits that the source test is trying to establish, and which rules and requirements. So that information, we were supposed to get it anyways, but most of the time we don't get it. So we fill it out, and we don't. And when we get it, at least when we receive the application or the source testing in our group, we look at what the source testing requirements was supposed to be. We fill out the forms and we forward it back to the source testing group.
Right.
So we try to assist the companies by filling out the forms for them, but we're not going to do at the beginning initial phases that we're not going to be looking, if everything's complete, because we just don't have the time to do that. There's just too much time. So we
should be part of the protocol, ideally, then.
well, I think it would be great for you to join us at the Equate meetings so we can bring it up. Because certain
I haven't
things
figured out when they are. Okay.
Well, no, I mean I can have you included in the.
January 5th.
Is it January 5th? Next month?
If you want me to help, sure. just
Sure,
let me know.
because it helps. It's actually an
Yeah,
open
Greg is
forum.
count-
It's a workshop type of a process because we're actually asking for help. We're telling them, here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
What are your comments? What are your thoughts? Can we do it better?
Right.
We only had two meetings.
Yes. Well, that was, but out of the first two meetings, that was the two external meetings. We've been actually meeting a lot more frequently internally to get to those two internal meetings, and we had to go because there was a requirement that was asked by us by the governing board to have a presentation to the SSC. So we're on a schedule to have this thing done. So it's just we're going to be moving a lot more rapidly in the future with the Equate process.
That's a good thing.
I guess just one kind of complicating factor that's come up is on the Equate and the new source test system. Is that just for source test submitted, as of day one going forward and not retroactively to all source tests in the past that, have been used for various things.
Yes.
And I guess there's not necessarily a definitive answer on that yet. But that would, of course, have huge consequences, certainly for your permitting backlog,
Well-
but for everyone else as well.
Right, and I completely agree with you. It has a lot to do, actually, with us, if you don't change the protocol, we accept the protocol that was initially approved. But the problem is that with the AER and for toxic purposes and the fee purposes, the sources that, or protocol that was done, or the sources that was done, maybe it was only one sample instead of a triplicate sampling, which might have been acceptable for saying if you're in compliance with the rule, but not appropriate to establish what the actual emissions would be. So, we get, so we get a lot of source test reports that comes back with only one testing, one sampling, instead of triplicate sampling. And the response that we get back from the source testing is that, yes, you can use the source test to demonstrate compliance with the rule, but you cannot use it to actually for emission calculations, because it wasn't done in triplicate sampling. So that's where maybe.
For 10 years, you've been using the data from that source test.
That's just
You're not gonna go back and say, oh, well, now you can't use it for your ADRs.
That is not up to us.
No, no,
I'm
no,
gonna leave that
no.
to the AER
No.
group to make that decision.
Two different things. The triplicate is to make sure that the fluctuation in the monitor, the testing equipment, that bandwidth of error is minimized. These triplicates are done at the same time versus snapshots every time. So those two groups are not the same. The purpose is not the same. The triplicate is to make sure that your error in your testing at that period of time has been minimized. Understanding measurement is measurement, right? You don't always get the same number. So you try it 3 times at the same time, so you minimize. Statistically, you're better, your numbers are better. That's a reason for triplicate.
I thought you did need triplicate for compliance.
Uh,
That's
Am I
a
wrong?
performance test only.
Yeah, that's
Performance
That's
test.
yeah.
right.
Initial.
Well, usually the
Or
source
it's
test
rule
method,
driven, for instance, by
source test methods
taxes.
define the type of sampling and number of samples.
You'll be surprised how many sources we get that is not following that
The
process.
source test method, right?
Yeah.
Not the report that we actually get, so the facility is sort of shortcut the process by not doing, because triple sampling is much more expensive than doing a single sample.
And, again, precision is what they're looking for in the triplicate.
For actual emission calculations.
And in compliance, so long as you're way lower than this threshold, we say you're compliant, don't worry about it, right?
So let me get this done. If the source test method says triplicate sample, and you do duplicate, do we have an option, even an option to do less than triplicate?
Well,
Because your protocol states, hey, we're gonna follow this technical method, and you're bound to follow that method, right?
We certainly, that would be our advice to follow the protocol.
But then if a method states, okay, duplicate sample, but then for compliance testing, you require 3, but then it's more stringent
if
than the
it's
test
this,
method?
if it's this difference, right, the threshold is this high, and your test is this low, I'm gonna ask you to do 2 more sample, and you say, you're wasting my time, wasting my money, because for no way I'm gonna be violating why you doing this to us. Therefore, we just say, okay, fine, we'll do it, we'll use it for compliance purpose, but certainly not for emission calculation. Emission calculation is still used at the threshold level.
What
So
if
that's
you've
the
been
difference.
using it for the last 10 years? Whatever the source test data was, are you saying to continue to use it into the future, you're going to have to resubmit the source test for approval?
No. Again, we're talking about 2 different things, determining compliance versus using it for emission calculation.
I'm asking about for emission calculation.
Right. So emission
So
calculation.
source tests that have been used, that were done in the past, and let's even say years past, and have been used, grandfathered in, used in AERs that have been approved by AQMD, fees paid on them, all of that, that may or may not, I don't know, haven't perhaps been approved by AQMD yet. I mean, there are many that have been there for years and years. But I mean, that's, I think, the concern, that retroactively, data that has been used in AERs, HRAs, et cetera, may have to go back through a process.
Yeah, well, we are not going to change our process. So I think the question that you're asking is more, probably better answered through the equate process than the permit streamlining. Because, we're not changing our process as far as we're concerned. But if you're reporting emissions for the AER, they may require you to do different process than what we had accepted in the past for the permit.
And when do we find that out?
That is up, we need to do that through that process, through the equate process. So, January 5th, we can, that's still in discussion.
So it won't be for this reporting year coming up?
That one, again, I do not know how the AER process is going to go through.
But I think what Susan is saying is, can she rely on the past?
Well, it's out of our division, so I cannot really speak to what AER is going to accept or not.
So
that would be Sarah Reese, Tracy Goss, that they will be better suited to answer that question.
well, I'm sure that's not just me, but
Right,
that
yes.
question.
Actually, that question has come
All
up.
kinds of folks.
That question
have
has
been
come
doing
up, and I think there
AER,
was a discussion. I'm not sure if the discussion has been finalized or not.
Yeah, and this Pontius Pilate attitude, that you're taking here, that.
No, but it's not the pilot attitude I'm taking, because, I don't want to speak out of place for the division.
Rule 301 does say for AERs that the air district will define the emission factors to be used.
And if they've approved emission factors that you've used in the past,
If they're approved, then.
well, I mean, approved by virtue of the fact that AER is approved.
Well, no, that's not approval. There is a formal approval process, and you are supposed to use,
Right, no, help me.
I know too much, sorry. AERs are supposed to use approved, and so you have a document that says approval, and on the document, it defines what it's approved for, whether it's approved for compliance or for reporting.
Well, I know in HRAs, like our voluntary risk reduction plans, they've come up with a hierarchy because there had been source tests lost on someone's desk at AQMD have been, back and forth, but they said if it's been used in an approved HRA, then it's,
Then you're good to go.
de facto considered an approved source test.
Right.
So that was the hierarchy for HRAs. I'm just assuming that's for AERs, but at some point,
Yeah.
I mean, AERs, we're in AER season, right? The holiday season.
Yes,
So-
unfortunately, AER season is
Yes.
right after the holiday
It's
season.
beginning, yeah.
Yeah, so I think maybe that question can be better answered through the equate process. Because, we really don't have any say about what AER group is going to accept or not accept. So I don't want to speak out of place and speak for them, and then I could be wrong, and then I have to apologize. So I prefer not to say
I
anything and
just
then
figured
apologize later.
maybe you were anticipating if there were a change, that could be a big influx into your.
No, I don't know if it's going to have that much of an influx.
Okay, that's.
Hopefully
that's
not.
my-
Now, if there is additional toxic compounds that are going to be introduced, that's a whole different situation or issue. But
The
for
issue I
now,
think Bill was
yeah,
talking about,
right,
the
so, but then
CTR
we haven't really got to that point yet.
We're talking about introducing, what is it, like 600?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we have to go back and sit down and decide, grandfathering, not grandfathering.
List
That's
is-
still,
yeah.
it's still in the infancy.
It's a lot of pesticides and things like that, so we don't see too much of that. I won't affect it.
Okay, go to the next item. But thank you. Because, I don't want to speak on behalf of AER group, so.
It is a problem. She's right.
Yeah,
It is
you're
a
right.
problem.
I'm not saying that you're not correct. I'm just saying that I prefer the AER group to respond to that question. And the engineer.
Are we doing the sources report or the sources?
No, it just all goes to sources.
When we point by name?
Same thing. Unless they have past sources, engineers, who can do the review. Everything is going through the source system. All right, Danny, it's
Okay.
yours.
You would switch gear, going from computer back to paper. How's that? It's actually saying that we're going all the way back to 1989. As a matter of fact, I wrote one of these, section of the permit processing handbook. That shows you how long it was. We had, back in '89, issued this, and really back then, our purpose was to really train our engineer on how to do permit processing. And how we did it is that we want to have, again, uniform evaluation. We want consistency. The conditions are enforceable. Then when engineer change from one unit to the other, we use it as a training material too. So by that, if everybody does the same thing, everybody don't have to reinvent the wheel, we improve efficiency. Back then, we had 19 sections, it's really 19 equipment group. And that's what we've been using, and then we kind of ignored it for 20 years.
Right.
And then now we've thought that looking at the online processing, really, some of it came from that, the basics concept and all that. What we want to do, next slide.
Wait, may I ask a
Sure.
question? And I'm super excited about this because this is something that's really needed. What we've used, now this was a document that was mostly all internal to the AQMD. It really wasn't a public document. Although some of us had some, it was very helpful. It was very helpful. But in the interim, the public document was the CPP manual. And the CPP manual hasn't been updated since 2015 now. And there really are, there really always has been some gaps in that, but that's also the information that the outside has to understand what's required so that the quality of what they submit is hopefully better.
Right.
And the better, information people have an understanding to submit, the better, then easier it is all the way around. So will this become public? Will this replace maybe the CPP manual? I mean,
So
I
it's
teach the
really
class, so I
three
can.
different things, right?
Yeah,
Here's the permit handbook, there's a CPP thing, and there's this online thing. They all look at the same set of rules,
they should,
right?
that's
And
right, they should dovetail
eventually get
together.
into the same place, the A permit, right?
Yeah,
So really, where is it most comprehensive? I would say the permit handbook would be the most comprehensive.
Right.
We deal with most everything, at least if not the actual case. We will
Right.
put the criteria out and say, hey, these are the things that even though we didn't mention it in the more details, there's something that you gotta watch out for, and
right,
then, we would at least highlight those,
right.
right? So,
So I would suggest, and it's been a long time since I've looked at this document, look at the CPP document and just incorporate it in and have one document rather than,
well, again,
Multiple.
CPP has one legal thing about having passed that, you can do certain thing, you can say yourself as a CPP and all that.
it's
Which-
prepare permit applications.
Right,
That's
which we're
the only purpose.
Sometimes we're really not happy with what CPP bring us, right? Because they're supposed to bring us a complete, and we have quite a few that we say, where is this, where is that, right?
And,
So-
and
yeah.
I do think some of it is because there's not clarity exactly of what's required. We have the checklist,
Yeah.
but, and then the manual, which is
Yeah.
kind of lacking.
That's actually a very good idea. What we can do is take a look at what we have in CPP and what we're proposing in the permit stream, the handbook update, and see if can be. And if cannot be, maybe the CPP manual would be a lot smaller in
Sure.
sections, and then there will be a much larger section in the processing handbook.
Right, because for example, the CPP manual, the thing that, and I don't blame you for saying these are inadequate, because in the CPP manual, for example, really is lacking the examples of the permit conditions that people should be including in their application. The sections on how to quantify emissions is very limited. And so people are left hanging with how exactly are we supposed to be doing this? And it's not overly clear. So I hear you in spades,
hold
I
that thought.
agree
I
with
think
you.
I have some of those kind of highlighted here.
Yeah.
That's a very good suggestion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, but really, what we're trying to do this time is, the first thing is update the handbook to current requirements after 30 years, right? And we still trying to say that if it's similar, they should come up pretty much the same way. And we will provide both the public and the permit engineer the guideline of how to do it permit. Okay, and most importantly, we can put out what are the criteria, what the rule requirements are. Which rule you say, we probably won't put all the rule in, we will refer to the rule and say, this is what you need to do, instead of when the rule change, we're gonna change this permit processing handbook, we can't keep up that way. So, so at the end, if it's consistent, then it'll be efficient, right?
That's great, yes.
Okay, so back then, we do a chapter by chapter, equipment by equipment, and really focusing in. But really what we have seen is that what we should do is put upfront a outline, a general look of what the permit processing is like. We would give you a processing overview of what we have to go through, fees, pre-screening fees, doing the, understanding the process, writing the conditions, calculating emissions and all that. And really a guiding principle of how to write a permit. What comes first, boiler, what makes it, what BTU, that kind of thing, is a consistent description of what equipment you are permitting, because that's paramount to identify what you're permitting. If we can't just say boiler, because then we wouldn't be able to tell what emissions and all that is. So that, and then we will have a template to say, here are the sections, here are the high points you need to put in to understand what we're looking for. So that would give you the equipment, the description, the background, when it started and all that, the emission calculation, and then rule evaluation, and eventually come to the conditions. So those are the new things that we're adding on. Like you said, that way we give people an overview, an insight of what permit processing, what information we need to do certain things. We hope to get this part out so that it's a general applicability for everybody.
That would
I
be
think
huge.
that's what you're looking for,
Yes.
and that's what we are planning to add on to what each section is.
Right.
So, okay, so if we dive into the equipment chapters, it mimic what it is truly, that we will have a chapter on the basic, and we have a separate chapter on the control, because really they are two different evaluations. We would have for each chapter what the equipment is like, what the calculation is like, what would be the air quality impact from the process itself, and then we'll identify the requirement, and then do permit conditions, and then also for all these exceptions that we can't handle online, we put criteria in. If you encounter this, what do you have to evaluate, right? Which are uncommon, but we should put it there for people to know that these will be the deviation you have if you come in with certain things. So those are the things that within each chapter, focusing on the equipment type, that's what the process is.
It's basically going to over-expand what we've already done with the permit processing handbook. The information that the current permit processing handbook is still accurate, because the equipment hasn't changed.
That's good.
It's just, we're just going to expand the scope of the discussions and the rule applications.
So that's a quick overview of what we're planning to do with updating this permit processing handbook. In terms of timing, we're thinking that with drafting and then internal review and all that, we probably have some drafts for you all to see it by the third quarter next year.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Well, I guess I can't control that.
So we will have the overview section ready by draft, and also we identified 5 equivalent chapters, and if you notice, it's very similar to this online. Basically, we're also taking the major portion of what we do first, address it first. So with these 5, again, we're talking about upward of 60-70% of our applications. Right?
That'd be great.
So that's our plan. We'll try to execute it on time and on schedule.
And under budget.
Would it be possible for us to get copies of the current one, what you have right now?
I thought you have it already.
I have a really old one.
I have
It's
a-
one that's probably
Nothing
20
has-
years old.
Well,
We didn't change anything.
Right. Do they have it?
We did not
It would be.
I don't think so.
It's not,
No.
no.
No, I was just
So we
wondering
ask
if
you
it's
for a
scanned.
copy?
Some of them are all written up. My copy is all scratched
We
up.
want your copy.
One is Google's.
You may not recognize any words.
What about the,
So not a
Title V technical guidance document? It hasn't been updated, I think, in over 10 years. I don't know if this has.
One thing at a time.
Well, no, well, okay, so we have an updated version on the online, even though the timing, it's, really nothing has changed with the Title V permits. So, and we haven't finalized it because we consider it to be a living document.
It's a draft. It's a good document. It's a
Yeah.
very good
It's a
document.
very
And I
good
don't,
document.
that one seems to be a little bit timeless. Nothing, I don't
Yeah.
think there's too much out of date with
Title
that.
V didn't change.
It's
Title
super,
V.
it's super good.
If anything, the first chapters in the Title V, the TGD documents are no longer applicable. Because we passed the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 process, and now we're just going strictly with the definition of a major source.
Yeah,
So we're pretty up to date with that at this standpoint.
but the applicability section is very good.
A lot of time and effort into that development of that project
Yeah.
process. Okay, so this brings us to the end of our agenda. We're gonna open it up to any questions, concerns, something that we can answer. Yes?
Is the public going to be able to see the drafts before the third quarter of the?
No, well,
Any workshops?
this is a very short time period. We don't even know if we're gonna be able to finish it up, but because, so probably we're not gonna release it to public anyways, so it would be just for the discussion purposes at here. So no, I'm not sure if we're gonna be able to do this. If we finish it up earlier, well, yes, we can talk about it. But for now, we're just focusing, remember, we're doing a backlog reduction still. We're trying to maintain all this stuff. We're doing the online stuff. We're actually jumping with both feet into this process. So hopefully we'll have something for you guys to take a look at maybe at the next Streamlining Task Force meeting. If not, then it will be the subsequent one.
I mean, we shouldn't be afraid of making it a transparent
No, we're not gonna be hiding it.
document
Right.
and process, because permit applications should be uniform and it should be obvious to people what's going on.
You're right, and
So
we're not, and
we
when
shouldn't
this
be
document,
afraid of-
right, when this document is done, it's gonna be online. It's just that I'm not even getting the reports back from the teams until April or March of next year, if
It'll
it's
take
right.
time, yeah.
So, it's not like we can just turn around and say, well, then hopefully we can have another permit streamlining task force meeting, then we can share with you what we have done, at least give you guys maybe a more outline of the material that has been produced,
Right.
and then we can talk
I think
about it.
it would be good to look at what we have now, and then
Yeah.
as it
Of course.
changes, then that would be good.
Yeah. Tips, go look at our SOB, the statement of basis for Title V is very much the same outline.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the outline, that's what it is.
That's an
And it's-
interesting point, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
trying to describe
Well-
the criteria, trying to
Yeah.
describe it accurately, and you know,
Well, we
the
submit
right
a
words and
lot of
all that.
applications. I don't know how many we submit, many.
But
We try as best we can to give you guys everything you need and do it the way you want it, but sometimes it's hard because we don't know exactly what all the policies are, and they're not written, and there is inconsistency in the groups. So
We're trying to
It does
handle
get-
that too.
yes, it does get challenging. So like as much as we can make the process, as you are saying, uniform, it's a beautiful, good thing.
No, I mean,
It'll make it easier for everyone.
Well, we have heard the comments,
Yeah,
you know, it's just that, you know, they have,
it takes time.
it takes time
I
and,
get it.
and we're trying our best to accommodate all the comments that we received from the Streamlining Task Force meeting and implement them as quickly as possible. I mean, I wrote down all the web video information and kiosks, CPP manual update, quantify emissions, and we go back and we try to see how much of it can be done by the next Streamlining Task Force meeting. And, you know, sometimes, you know, it seems like we're slow, but we're really not. It just, there's a lot on our plate to try to keep up with everything that needs to be done.
Well, in that case, you know, I think I've brought this up at every meeting about streamlining the actual permit forms. Because a lot of times, like, the forms just ask way too much questions, like in cover form, carbon form, whatever. Way too much technical information, design information, that really may not be useful in processing of the permit. Because I mean, I've asked, hey, the way I think this whole permit processing can be streamlined by streamlining the forms in the first place. Really, you know, sit back and, hey, you know, do we need number of transfer units for scrubbers? I mean, what, you're gonna plug that information into software and try to verify that information? I mean, it just sometimes kind of, you know, I think you need to really sit back and do we really need all this information in the forms?
You know, in some cases, maybe we don't need the number of a transfer unit. I mean, if it's an off-the-shelf water scrubber, maybe we don't need it.
Yeah.
But if it's a chemical scrubber, you know, then
But do you
maybe
need-
not the number of a transfer unit, but the concentration, the flow rate.
Right,
So then that question, and then if we have to check it, because we still have our manuals
Mhm.
that we have developed back from the 1980s and said, you know, that they do go through the process of see if there is a design, if it's designed properly. So for simpler equipment, maybe, you know, even like I said, even if it's just like a water scrubber to control PM. So that's just a contact correlation equation.
Yeah.
And so, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, for a chemical scrubber, we're not going to be looking at the detailed design of an equipment.
Yeah, I mean, I think instead of maybe starting from here, maybe start from here, and if you need more information, then you can ask.
Oh, no.
But then it'll go back to this whole AI
Going back
issue.
to that chart again.
Yeah,
We're
but
held
there
up,
are times that
waiting
there's-
for more information.
Spend a lot of time trying to fill all the information, hey, I'm not sure if this is really needed, but then I have to get all the design information. And there are times I have left them out, and, you know, no one came back to me and said, hey, we need all this information, so,
Right. Well, I
It's a
think even-
two-edged sword, really, is that if we take it upfront and say, this is what the information that you only need, then we turn around, oh, we need this information, what would your reaction be? That's frustrating, why can't you ask me for more upfront?
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, maybe not
it's
that
a two-edged
drastic,
sword.
but I think
It
you
is,
should,
yeah.
you should really have to look back and review each form, hey, do
Well, we have done that. You
Yeah.
know, engineering's been working with IM to going through all the 23 supplemental information, equipment forms, and we have been discussing at engineering manager and staff level what is necessary. So I can't remember the exact determination on the NTUs, for instance, but we have deleted information, requested information, and we've added other information that is pertinent to the answering the question today. Do you comply or do not comply?
So they're all coming, it's just that, you know, we haven't finalized everything yet. So,
It's part of the
Hang in there.
electronic application.
Right. I've seen the forms, I mean, now the PDF one is editable, that's nice, but.
Yeah, there's,
Right.
we've looked at those PDF forms
Uh-huh.
and we're developing them for today's answers and questions. It's
Okay.
just, yeah, the public hasn't seen those because IM is still programming that and we need to look and see how it all flows.
Amir, when are you going to update the admin committee? This this December or next year?
For which part?
In other words, didn't you commit to updating the admin committee again?
I don't know, we have to go back. I don't recall, I'm not sure, maybe we did. As far as the number of the applications processed through the system,
But not this month.
not this month, no, I don't, no, it definitely wasn't this month, because otherwise I would have been flagged, that, hey, how many of you guys did? But again, the modules, I mean, I'm being honest with you guys, the modules, they're not being used because of the fact that, because, we're having a hard time getting people to use them. And yes, we need a hook, but then, I mean, I can't go to the governing board and say,
I can tell you why we don't use them, because we don't permit those source types. So there are 3 source types we just don't get involved in.
Yeah.
I mean, when people come with us with an automotive booth, we say, just go to the district website and fill out the form,
well, if
It's
you
not hard.
recall,
You don't need me to do that.
That's the majority of their permits are
Yeah.
one.
Yes. Yeah, which
if
should
you
be-
recall, in 2016, when we introduced the concept of the online processing, the modules were not there. We did not anticipate it to go with the modules initially. The modules came after, we said, what we were planning to do initially was our phase 1 was going to be only working on the 408 forms, which would have been all the 408 forms, the SQL forms, the PPS forms. That was going to be our phase 1.
Right.
But then somehow the 3 modules, they worked their way into our phase 1,
Right.
which was great because, some of the forms that we were going to create under phase 1, that was sort of got created as part of the 3 modules. And the phase 2 that we're doing right now was going to be also our phase 2 under the old system, which was that, we're going to create our 408 forms, go to the phase 2, which would have been the Rule 222s, emergency engines, and the soil vapor extraction systems, just so that we have a better concept of how to do this, and then go to the 3rd phase, which was our paperless processing. But the modules came in at a later time, and then at some point that became the focal point of the automation system. So it's like, oh, okay, so we need to do these 3 first. So that's why we put all of our time and effort to developing this, because that came in as a request by our governing board to develop these modules immediately. So that's why we went ahead and did them outside the whole concept that we initially had in mind. But it worked out really great because, all the 408 forms got created also. And we learned a lot by creating the module. So don't get me wrong, it wasn't a great process. We actually gained a lot of experience on how to developing these modules. And in fact, that's why we were able to send out these 3 modules really quickly, because of the lessons that we learned with the other 3 modules. It's just that it's one thing to have the module, it's another thing trying to get people to come and actually use it. And we just don't have let's say, for the lack of a better word, the authority to force people to use them at this point.
Got to get Garrett and his group.
Yeah, actually, we have tried. When the 3 modules got released, we put it on our website. We had it on our running banner. Hey, the modules are available. Contact us. Let us help you. Well, then we sort of got, well, no, this is not going to work for me. So I'm not going to recommend it to anybody to use it. It's like, why? It's a good module. It's yes, it may be. It's designed right now to have certain restrictions, but until we test it and see what else could be done to it, we don't want to go and update something when nobody's going to use it. But nevertheless, I'm just going to assure all of you guys are here. We're going to the back of the drawing board for some of these modules that we have created to see what we can do with them that become even more user friendly. But again, it's an input-output device, so it cannot be. We just don't have the resources to make it as friendly as what Amazon can do. And you also have to design. Think about it's being designed by a bunch of engineers. So.
But many people are using the AER, the online AER system, and that's going, I think, very smoothly. At least
Right. Yeah.
I think
The AR program is, and then, we're hoping that these
People are
these
getting
three
used to it.
modules,
Yeah.
because we thought about that, basically
Right.
handles about 1,500 to 2,000 applications a year. So if people actually get to use it, we can
Well,
help us.
you've done these modules, and that's great, and those are for the common, sort of easy things. But there are many others that are more complicated. What about going back to the 400A, the 400E, the CEQA, just put those on and allow people a portal to import the other documents that are needed?
We're working on this. So, part of our phase 2 is actually working on all the 400E forms.
Yeah.
And we've been actually working on it. It's just that, some of the stuff, we wanted to at least have a product that, help us with reducing the number of our applications instead of just having the 400E forms.
Right.
And that's what Ed was alluding to earlier. We've gone through every single 400E form and tried to create a fillable form.
Yeah, and as long as you maintain flexibility, so smart people can put the right things in the boxes. Because sometimes the error checking will kick you out and you go, well, I can't fill out this form because it doesn't, my reality doesn't fit whatever somebody assumed there.
And that is first and foremost concern that we have. When we design this, okay, so if somebody doesn't know how to use this, how are they going to do this? Forget about the fact that, we know how to do it. So we actually have people who have never worked with these modules. We bring them in and we say, test it.
Do it, you're right.
Do it.
Because remember when we first had the PDF forms, the first thing we encountered was we couldn't fill them out because they didn't take the information the way it we needed to give it. So we would go to our IT guy and go, okay, you gotta hack the form to so that we can enter it.
With 3 or 4 little cubby holes out there behind permitting. Put a terminal in one of those, or 2 terminals, with your online permit system. And then when somebody comes up to the counter and says, I'd like to get a district permit, follow me, ma'am, or sir, around there. And, self-checkout in the grocery store, here's that. And then before they leave, get a testimonial from them. And then put that on your on her.
Right, actually, testimonials.
I
Positive testimonials.
before. Thank you, AQMD.
Zen is, I'll be having more discussions with our IM group so we can, make this, because our goal is to get these permits out and, as quickly as possible. And then also get the engineers to focus on more complicated processes so that, we can actually bring down that number.
Yeah.
Because we know there's going to be a lot more influx of applications with the reclaim sunsetting process.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions, comments? No? Well, then, thank you for joining us. Yes. Thank you for joining us, and we will keep you guys updated on the next Streamlining meeting and then the progress that we have made, and hopefully, but if you have anybody that they can use the 222s, please let us know.
Yeah, how do we log into it, or is it available?
Well, no, it's not,
No.
it's going into production.
Okay, so if anybody needs to do a 222, we just contact you? You want us to try it out?
Those 3 forms, the asbestos boiler, small boilers, and jar boilers.
And more than likely, your group would be using the boilers.
We would do boilers. We would just, I can tell you right now, it'd be the small boilers. I know what they are, yeah,
1 to
sure.
2 many BTUs. I think that would be, because we know the negative air machines will be used immediately by the people who work on the asbestos
The
process.
asbestos folks,
Right, and the char boilers, they just, but the boilers,
I
if we can
can
get some
send out
help,
an
that would
email
be great.
of anybody using it.
All right, thank you.
Happy holidays.